Thank you, Father, for this wonderful opportunity to come together as like-minded people, sitting around your word, standing on the foundation of your truth. Father, I ask that you speak to us today, speak the words we need to learn, things that we need to know, so that the light can shine on the road that we're about to step upon for the remainder of this year and what is still ahead until your coming. I ask it all in the mighty name of Yeshua Mashiach. Amen. Alrighty, so we are in Torah portion, and I mispronounced it when I did my daily thing. It's not Tazaria, it's Tazria. But I think it can be pronounced as Tazaria as well, but I think the right one is Tazria. Now, I've highlighted two letters there so that three other letters can stand out. Anyone want to take a stab at it? What does that mean?
The first one looks like a head.
It's a tough letter to recognize because there's two others that look like it. Yeah, it's letter tough.
When I first saw the word, it made me think of Zarat. Similar sounds, but actually it's not the Zadi, is it? It's a T and a Z.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting connection.
So the white letters make the word Zara, which means seed. That's where the meaning of this Torah portion comes from. She conceives, and when she conceived seed, she gave birth. And the Taf and Yod is just to personify to the woman. But when you take it to the root word, it's Zerah, which means seed. And the whole theme, normally this Torah portion is in relation to the next one, which is all about leprosy. So we're not going to focus a lot on that. I'm going to do a little intro at the end that will lead into next week, which is all about leprosy, all the gore and stuff that we don't really want to talk about. But that's very significant for us to know from a spiritual perspective what does that mean. But we're going to look at the conception and then the consequences because of that within the current state that we're in. So last week we looked at Shemini, which means the eighth or the new beginning. In relation to the previous Torah portion was the consecration of the priesthood to prepare for the new beginning or the new cycle. And the new cycle also had the topic of food, which relates to clean and unclean. And we're going to discuss that today in a bit more detail. What does clean and unclean actually mean? And why is it important? What does it connect to? Why is it important to Yahweh for us to involve ourselves with clean things? Whether it's food, whether it's thoughts, whether it's words or actions, we need to steer towards that because there's a means to an end. And then the second chapter in this Torah portion is about leprosy, which is basically an unclean state. But the purification of the woman after childbirth is an unclean state. So the basic premise of this whole Torah portion is about the unclean state. And the unclean state is the starting point where we begin as well. Because when we're born into a fallen state, which can be perceived as an unclean state, and we need to be restored. And just a little side note, last week we looked at the restoration of the skin, which is Yahweh's glory, the or being on the skin, which is also the word or, and the replacement of the skin or the glory of the skin that is now going to be restored. And leprosy is a illness that manifests on the skin. So there's a connection there as well. So the restoration of the skin, what we talked about last week, also is the solution to the problem of leprosy, which is a fallen state. So that's just for introduction. All right, so let's start. So this week's parashah is called Tazaria or Tazria, Taf, Zain Resh, Yod, Ayin. That means conceive seed. It's found in Leviticus 2:21 that says, if a woman have conceived seed and born a man child, she shall be unclean 7 days. It comes from the word zara, that means to sow, to distribute, to plant, to set, to bear, to conceive seed, and to yield. Now, where this word is first found in Scripture, always give us the origin of the meaning, and that's in Genesis 1:11, where Elohim said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed," which is the word TORAH, "and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself." So now we see the concept of a seed that is the origin of something, but the seed contains everything of the essence of what that thing will be or will become. And in the same way, humans are also related back to seed. So a seed is basically your DNA package that contains everything of what it's about. And I've got two samples there. I've got the embryo, which is human. I've got I think it's a bean seed. And you'll see the similarities of what it looks like. They look similar in nature. And that is because of the intent of what a seed is. And the seed produces after its kind. So that's where evolution is falling off the wagon here. Because evolution, you can't produce outside of its kind, because always go back to a seed, unless you modify the seed through splicing and whatever techniques you want to use. But that is tampering or mixing, which is not permitted in Yahweh's Torah. So we will not mix. So when we take the word TORAH from the word Tazaria, we are left with the Taf Yod. And Taf Yod has got the gematria of 410. And the reason I look at the gematria, because there's no word Taf Yod that means anything in itself. It's got symbolism that Taf means yoke or cross, and Yad means hand. So it's putting your hand to the yoke or putting your hand to the plow. So it's like performing work in a sense. In an agricultural sense, it is to prepare the ground so that seed can be planted, so there can be a yield. So it's all linked into the same theme as well. But when we look at the number 410 and its meanings, we find the first word, which is Shema. Now, Shema means to hear and obey. Now, that's the premise of what we are supposed to do in relation to Yahweh's instructions or his commandments. We hear and we obey, and that will give us access to the covenant, and the covenant benefits if you interact with that through hearing and obeying. Then we see wives, abode, dwelling, and eighth, which is also the word Shemini. So it links back to the previous Torah portion, linking to the restoration of the skin. We also looked at the priesthood, who's now the women, who need to look after the new babies who come into the kingdom, nurture them so they can grow up and become mature inside the house of Yahweh. So we see the same symbolism. And abode, of course, is dwelling. That's also a house. That's also tabernacle or the temple. Wives, of course, is the bride or the priesthood. We see everything there, including the eighth, which is linked to this verse in Leviticus 21 verse 2, where the man-child is conceived, he will be circumcised on the eighth day. So we see that link there as well. Then we also see the words sacred, holy, and friend. So that's the connection to clean is holy or set apart. Something that's sacred is set apart for Yahweh. And if you are in line with Yahweh's things, then you are his friend, not his enemy. And becoming enemies of Yahweh is to change our nature in such a way that we can't exist in his presence without being destroyed. So Yahweh is actually our enemy because of our weakness of our state that we're in, because he's dangerous when we approach him in our unrefined state. And for us to be restored back, we need to change. And that's what this conception and the birth is all about, which Paul talked about, to be reborn or a rebirth. Yeshua also talked about it. And it's to go through another cycle of elevation, so to speak, so you can stand before Yahweh without being consumed, and then you become his friend, or it's more of a friendly relationship without the fear of being consumed because of your darkness. Now, what struck me here is what's in Genesis 1:11, where it said, the fruit tree yielding after its kind. So the fruit will come after its kind. So when we think about humans, Yahweh created us in his image and likeness, so we are after his kind. So if we corrupt ourselves, we're no longer after his kind. So that's where the opposer, or the other side of the world of duality, which is related to the Nachash, wants to pull us to become part of his kind, not part of Yahweh's kind. The intent of creation is to create us after Yahweh's kind, according to the seed. And we're going to see another connection here of what the process is of from the birth, what you need to have in order to grow up to become after Yahweh's kind. And the key is found within the symbolism that we see in the word for kind. Now, kind is the word mean, which is mem, yod, nun. Now, we saw that the letter yod, when we looked at Shimini, the last part of Shimini had the two hands, the two yods, with the nun in the middle. The nun can also represent a seed or a baby. It's like a mother holding a baby, or someone who's holding seed. And we see the same hand here in relation to kind or species, but when you remove the hand, you are left with the two letters mem nun, which is manna. And what is the first thing that Israel received after they left Egypt? After they were born, crossing the Red Sea, that's the breaking of the water, they received manna. So manna is like the milk that they needed to feed them as babies in the context of the wilderness, which is a very harsh environment. So we're going to look at what manna actually is to see what the process is that babies require in order to become after Yahweh's kind. So the only verse that describes manna, I've got A missing there, is in Numbers 11 verse 7, which says, "And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof was as the color of bdellium." Now, coriander is the Hebrew word. Coriander is the Hebrew word gad. It comes from the root word kadat, that means to penetrate, to cut, to attack, to invade, to gather together. Now, these meanings support the invasion of the sperms attacking the egg, penetrate, and then conception happens. So we see the symbolism there. We also see the spiritual side of it, where Yahweh penetrates our hearts with the seed of his word, he invade our souls, and then to transform us so we can be reborn. So the same symbolism there, and that is within the meaning relating to manna. Bdellium is the Hebrew bedolach, which means something in pieces or fragmented, excellent, a pearl that is white. And it comes from the root word badal, that means to divide and to separate, to distinguish, to differ, select, make difference, to separate itself in its action, which is a similar principle of set apartness, which can also be relating to holiness. So what we see in the coriander is that there's an initial process that needs to happen. The seed needs to penetrate your heart and invade you and take control of your life. That's the rebirth process, where the starting point is as a new baby. And then after that, you need to receive the division and the separation of what is the old man, what is the new man, and distinguish and make a difference between what I need to steer towards and what I don't need to steer towards in order to become set apart. And that's where the topic of clean and unclean comes into play, which we saw in the end of the previous Torah portion. So every decision you make will determine whether you drink the right milk as a baby to grow up, or whether you're going to drink poison that will slowly kill you off and you will no longer exist in that newborn state. And that's where the manna principle come into play. And that was the only thing they had in the wilderness to sustain them. Now, we currently don't have that luxury of only having the best meal. We've got a lot of things on our table that we can select. With your remote, you can click movies, what I'm going to consume on your table. You can select what food you want, or prawns, pig, or whatever is in the Bible prescribed as clean. So we've got so many choices. And having the influence of the world telling us through medical science and whatever, what is the best for us, brings confusion, and we tend not to listen to Yahweh. So we are not set apart, we are currently confused as humanity. And what Yahweh wants to bring back is the separation that will clearly differentiate between what is clean and unclean, because it's only the clean things that are pure that will help you to grow up, to be set apart, to be after his kind. If you take anything that's not from him, that is defined as unclean, that will defile his nature within you and defile the work that he started as a newborn baby, and you will slowly die and become after the Nachash's kind, which is death. That's the end result of that, death and darkness. So that's why clean and unclean is so critical, specifically for new believers coming into the faith. And that's one thing that a lot of new believers struggle with. Why can't I eat? Because there was the sheet. Whose sheet was it? Peter's sheet. He saw a sheet with animals on it. But as I said before, when you look at the Greek, all the animals, it includes scorpions, serpents, stuff like that. We don't eat that. So it's not actually food. It just depicts the different nations. And you need to sit together with other nations around the same table and not tell them that they are clean, not allowed to eat with you, because that was the issue at hand back in the day, where the Orthodox said, you're not allowed to sit with the heathen. And that's what the sheet is all about. And that was actually translated to Peter afterwards. Oh, that's what it meant. But no one reads that. They just want the sheep so I can eat what I want. And I use that as a very cheap excuse to eat unclean things that will destroy them spiritually.
Do you know what the color bdellium looks like?
No. I tried to keep it under 2 hours. Come on. Someone Google it.
Maybe it's white.
It's got the color of pearl, and pearl is a pure, beautiful mother of pearl.
Maybe it's white and at the same time captures the full colour of the spectrum. Because pearl has got like the colours in the rainbow as well as being white.
Yeah, so white is the radiance producing the subtle colours, which
White contains all the colours.
And white contains all colour as well. And that's why white is linked to holiness as well. So that's the end result. And white light is the purest form of the colour white, because it radiates that colour in itself with energy.
Suggesting what you're saying, but if you look at a pearlescent paint, it's black. It's white, but it's got, when you look, all the flakes have got all the different colours in there at the same time.
Yeah.
It says it's black.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Well, we know they
line that one apart, isn't it?
Blew that out of the water, didn't it?
it might be
Doesn't it say in some versions that the manna was white?
Yeah, well, isn't what it says though?
it's the meaning of the Hebrew word for bdellium. Bdellium is just a English translation of what they think it is. It might not be the true.
Because it looked like dew, and it wouldn't look like dew on the grass. It was black.
No, it's definitely white and radiated. I think it had that beautiful look to it as well. All right, so that is after Yahweh's kind. So after Yahweh's kind is to become light, because we are light beings, or supposed to be. We should radiate light, and how we radiate light is through our actions and our words and everything we do, which is in line with the clean things that Yahweh wants us to embrace, because that is his character. Right, let's look into the sorrows. Now, I just stepped outside of the giving birth just to give it a bit of context, because we've got leprosy at the end of the study, so we need to sort of relate it to the childbirth and all the pain associated with it, which sort of relates to the state of leprosy as well. And that's found in Genesis 3:16, where it says, to the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your childbirth. In pain you will bring forth children, yet your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. The sorrow is the word itztabon, and it comes from the root word astab, that means to hurt, pain, grieve, displease, vexed, rest. It's first found in scripture in Genesis 6:6, where Yahweh repented that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him, that's the word astab, at his heart. So what the connection I make here is that the sorrow, that is the curse that came upon the woman, in producing life is the same sorrow and grief Yahweh experienced when he created man, because he knew what they will do and he grieved him, but he kept on pushing until that life source manifested in this physical realm, even though he knew what the end result will be. And that's that pain that he experienced that's now transferred to the woman. So the woman has the best idea of what Yahweh feels like, especially in the womb, when they kick and they do things that's very uncomfortable. We make Yahweh very uncomfortable when we don't align with his things, or aligning with the birth channel where you need to get set free into this world as a newborn baby. So the repentance of Yahweh is the multiplication of sorrow that he experienced for producing life, which is humanity. And that came upon you woman because of the curse and the fall of man. And because she's the life giver, unfortunately, she needs to bear this pain and share that with Yahweh's pain. Now, greatly multiply is associated with pain. That's the word rabah, rabah. It's the repeating of the same word. And that word rabah means to be or become great, to become many, to be or become much, or become numerous. So what we see at the end of the greatly multiplication of pain is a great nation, or a great people, or a great creation. So in order to make humans as great as Yahweh, our pain needs to be multiplied in order to build the depth of character that Yahweh's got. And Yahweh went through the same pain process. And for us to be like him, we need to experience some of that. Yeshua said, you can't be my servant unless you go through the same things that I'm going through. And he suffered unto death. His pain was greatly multiplied. And if we say we walk in his footsteps, that's the pathway that's in front of us. And that holds true specifically for us who's facing the Jordan. There will be persecution and the multiplication of pain because we don't belong to this world. And the world is sort of aligning us to push us in a direction, but we don't want to go in that direction. We want to follow Yahweh. So there's some pain and conflict happening in our midst during these times. Unless we roll over, go the easy way, go downstream with the flood, with everyone else, down to the depths of the Dead Sea, which is the lowest point on the earth, where nothing grows. And that's a symbol of Sheol, the lowest point of this kingdom. What we see in sorrow, we see it's tabon. It's got a vav and a nun at the end. No, the vav is us, and the nun is the fruitfulness, the little seed. So with that sorrow, there's a seed that comes with it. And that seed will grow and give you that character that you need. In simple terms, if you compare a horse and a new baby horse being born, they can stand up and they could walk, even other animals as well. But a baby, how long does it take a baby to start walking? How many months?
8 months to 1 year.
And they have to crawl in order to develop the complexity of the brain, in order to have the logical side of the brain developed, where animals don't have that. So because of our complexity, it also is our vulnerability, and our weakness is also our strength. So the pathway of crawling, and we're supposed to be superior, but other animals are actually more superior at the same age level right after birth. We seem to be the weaker of the species, if you think about that. But we are the most complex ones. We need to go through these crawling pains of sorrow and things for our development, because we are superior beings, and those things need to be built in. The sorrow contains the little nun, the seed, for every little bit of development, for every little bit of pain you go through, to make you the fullness of what Yahweh wants you to be, that he will transfer to us. But it's through that process, unfortunately. Anyone want to make a comment on that?
Yeah, I don't like that.
I don't like pain. Okay, let's take it. Rachel, you start studying now, or you want to start studying. that's going to be very painful. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of discipline. You have to break your habits to get into a new habit. You have to push on, even if you're tired, stressed out, and you have to do your normal stuff around the house. You're committed and you have to go through it. And that's a painful process. But the end result will be that nun, that little seed that will grow and will be a new sprout that will be part of your life. And you will bear fruit from that sprout. And that is a blessing. So everything that we do, even Moses going up the mountain, is a painful process because you have to climb against gravity carrying a few stones with you. You lost a couple of stones.
Yeah, have you ever speculated on how much those tablets weighed?
Yeah.
Stone, whatever way you look at it, is not.
It's
light.
heavy.
It's heavy.
Especially if you want to read from it. And if you think about Moses' age, his eyesight was probably a bit weaker, so you need bigger font.
But they
Bigger
don't
stone.
say that because we reckon it's only 10 commandments. But I've read somewhere they say it was more like everything in the 10 commandments was written on these stones. So it had
Multiple facets when you look at it from another angle. It's like a see-through stone. It's not a.
So not like,
Yeah, it's not like the ones, no.
No.
I think it was more like.
Where did they get that?
I think we speculated on this last year. Remember when they went halfway the mountain, there was a floor of sapphire stone? And what have grabbed to there? Don't know. Yeah.
Just as a matter of clarity, you mentioned before about his eyesight and being but it does mention that when he's on Mount Horeb looking out over the promised land, that his eyesight is undiminished, so we can
See.
So it's definitely.
He didn't need.
He didn't need it.
Didn't
Or
need
maybe
to
he
be-
was
He
nearsighted.
didn't need to be.
Like me, I can see them, I can't see you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, but I think he might have been
Yeah.
fine. He doesn't stare at the computer all day long like me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think their eyesight was fine. Right, the other example I want to use about going through pain, if you look at the insect world, the beautiful butterfly, they go through the process of squeezing out of that pupa to get blood into the veins that basically feed the beautiful wings. And if they don't go through that, the wings won't be underdeveloped and they won't be able to fly. So the pain that you go through is just a process that's got a means to an end. And every one of us suffer a different kind of pain because we've got a different gifting or a different thing that we need to do within this life. So your pain is different. And you need to relate to people with similar pain in order to mean something to people carrying the same yoke as you do. Now, some people not only carry one yoke, but they carry two or multiple yokes, as you can see in your name. And her name's got two tufts in it. So, and her whole life had a lot of suffering, continual suffering. But when you look at her, she's a beautiful butterfly. And she's got a depth of character because of that. I know.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
It does. It builds character. And in the moment, it's terrifying. But when you look back and the beauty that it created as a result of that, it's so beautiful. Even if you look at the wabi-sabi aspect of the Japanese art form of taking something that's destroyed, when they take a pot, they will take beautiful glass or gold and fill the cracks with it and make something beautiful. So every single crack that you have is a beautiful art piece. That's just a natural line.
The interesting thing with, you mentioned about the discipline, like with study or whatever. The thing I noticed is, like, I've taken up violin, trying to learn violin, and I'm having to practice certain things. I've been doing it every day, for weeks. And the interesting thing is, in the suffering, you don't see the change. But then one day, when I pick it up, I can do what I've been trying to do. And I think, well, what made the difference? Because I don't feel like I'm doing anything different to what I did before, except persevering. But somehow now I can do that thing.
Now you have skill.
Yeah.
That came with pain.
And you don't notice it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you've got this butterfly, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No pain, no gain. That's the way it is, the way of the world. If we want to achieve something, we need to put in the effort. All right, so there's another example of Yahweh repented. Now he repented, feeling the sorrow when he created man. Second one was on the mountain, when Yahweh repented when they made the golden calf. And he wanted to wipe them clean and start over with Moshe. And then because of the covenant and Moses' intercession, they survived. And then they persevered through the wilderness, eating manna to try and transform them. And at the end, the next generation was the only ones who succeeded in that. And then there will be a third time of sorrow, multiplication of sorrow, which will be associated with a great birth. And that is the one that we see in the future. That's recorded in prophecy books as well as in Revelation, where there will be Rabba Tabon, which is the great multiplication of sorrow, which is also called in Matthew 24 the time of sorrows, which is referred to as the Great Tribulation. And that Great Tribulation has got the climax of all pain. It's where the whole of humanity will be squeezed through a birth channel and experience that pain in order to be reborn into that new life. And that's the reason of that point in time of great sorrows. So it's not because Yahweh is evil, it's just the way it's designed, and it follows the pattern of seed, then incubation, then the birth, and then there's also an unclean stage or time frame where there's purification that needs to happen after the birth before you can stand before him. So we see all of that in line with this Torah portion that we see here. And we're going to look at a few of those numbers just to put it into context. And that is found within the woman being unclean for 7 days after she gives birth to a male. And then she's unclean for 14 days when she gives birth to a woman, a baby girl. And after that, giving birth to a boy, she must stay home for 33 days to cleanse herself from bleeding. And in the same, when it's a girl, 66 days. She needs to stay home for purification before she can go back into the temple. So the symbolism is entering the temple, entering the presence of Yahweh, 33 and 66 days. And we all know that number 7 has to do with cycles. That is in sync with the weekly as well as the feast cycles. And the number 7 has got the words associated with to perish, to varnish, destruction, to grieve, and become faint, mourning, lament, and to wear out. And we know within cultures, when there's a lot of boys born in the world at the same time, people say we expect war coming up in the future generations. When there's a lot of girls, they expect peace. And we see it now with the number 7 and the purification process that lead up to conflict, where there's a lot of boys just associated with that. And there's a lot of lamentation where number 14 is associated with the following words: thorns, sacrifice, gift, sufficient, hold the feast, dance, celebrate, beloved, which is the word David or David. So we have some balance there. So it's not only negative, there's an outcome that's more positive with the girls, and that's the peace period where there's a feast and a celebration at the end. But there is suffering, sacrifices, but it's more in a sort of, I now can control this. I'm not subject to war. I can decide I want to make an offering. I want to make a sacrifice. It's like, I want to start studying. It's a sacrifice of my time. So you invest in that, and that's basically what the woman or the bride is all about. You sacrifice your time for the benefit of the kingdom so that we can celebrate the feast one day, which is the marriage feast, and celebrate with our beloved, which is Mashiach. So we see the 2 periods, that is 2 periods of 7, which is now 14, or the 2 periods of 33, that's 66. We also saw that with Esther with 2 periods of 6 months of purification to come before the king. All right, so number 66. This is the one that is the time that she was unclean for 14 days, but then she needs to stay on for another 66 days for the purification of her bleeding before she can come back into the temple. And that sort of made me think, isn't the 14 days enough? Why? And why double the time? Don't understand it. Do you understand? Any medical reasons anyone knows of?
We looked at this last year and said that we think it's because it's the female and the female, it's actually double for the girl.
Double the curse.
Double, yes, because you're having a female, you're bleeding the 2 people.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because the baby girl actually bleeds when they're born.
That's right.
Oh.
It's the hormones that actually goes through them. So that's
And because the baby's attached to the mum, they're both in that state of uncleanness for that period.
What's also interesting is a woman carries her daughters and her granddaughters inside of her.
Daughters
And the granddaughters. You are born with that. So you've got your daughters and your granddaughters. Because your daughters got the seed is already in the baby girl. Very interesting.
One of the explanations the Jewish woman gave me was that the woman is producing after her own kind and needs to stay away from. It's like a humbling, and not the possibility of feeling proud because she's produced something that's like her rather than the man. And
Now, to honor the man wants a boy. And if she produced after her own kind, she's not really honoring him with that fruit from her body, in a sense, especially if it's the firstborn. Yeah. And especially if it's a king having his first offspring. Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of depth in that. So number 66 means lamentation, to be depressed, food, give judgment. And then we see Yahweh is able, wheel, ship, whirlwind, winding stair or ladder, give a reward, and behold Elohim, or to see Elohim. So what we see from the number 66, and this is in context of the woman being able to go back into the temple or approaching the presence of Yahweh. It's like Esther approaching the king. And we see the negative side of it, which is the lamentation, to be depressed, sit at home, baby blues. Food, she produced the food for the baby, so it's a lot of draining on her. And then we see the positive side, end result, which is to behold Yahweh, to give a reward. And the winding stair is associated with the temple, where it gives access to the middle layer, which is the holy place. But it's also associated with the elevation force of a cycle of 7, which is a whirlwind that's got an upward thrust, or the ability to elevate you as you engage with it. So anything to do with the Torah or the festivals, if you engage with it, it will elevate you. That's the essence of what it is. And we see that symbolism found within this as well. And we also have the woman nurturing a baby is actually the priesthood nurturing new believers. So that's the context that makes it relevant for all of us, whether you're male or female, because we've got the motherly function within the household for the benefit of the people to be elevated so they can behold Elohim. It's not about you, it's about the next generation. And the women, or the priesthood, they are the ones who will get the multiplication of sorrow or the persecution or whatever they go through, in order so that the new ones can come in. So imagine, persecution comes, all the priests of Yahweh in one moment say, no, we're going to do a runner, we're not interested in this. We just leave the field there, no one's there available to harvest, everyone will go astray. We don't care because we're afraid. We're running this way. Conflict's that way. So we need to be brave and walk into the harvest and be available to experience the greatness of the suffering of what is to come, which is part of the great birth. And you are part of the birth because you're the woman figure giving birth to the new people coming in as a result of the bigger birth of the pain, the time of sorrows that we're all in. So we need to be in it in order to be used by Yahweh for their benefit. So if you ask yourself, and I ask myself many times, what is the purpose now? Everything seemed to go south. I don't want to live anymore. It's getting too uncomfortable. I've lived my life. I want to be out of here. But it's not about you. It's about those people. If you look at them in the street, the majority of people are lost. It's only a handful that truly follow Yahweh. And it's for their benefit. If you truly love those people, be there for them. Be there in the trenches for them and help them to come to faith when they're shaken by the situation around them. We need to be there for them. And that's the caring mother attributes that we need to have. And that braveness of being there and not running the other way. Yahweh will look after us. We'll be okay. Because he said so. And at the end, I think it's this verse. No, it's not this one. It said there will be a great multitude that you won't be able to number who stand before the throne who came out of the great tribulation. That's the harvest. It's the newborn babies. It's because of the mothers who are there to do the harvest and to be part of that who made that possible. So Yahweh are going to use these people for that. And we'll look after the mothers or the priesthood during that time. If not, if we all get killed or whatever, there won't be anyone to look after them. So Yahweh will protect us because we choose to fulfill this function. So we've got a special protection as mothers in this time to come. So fear not. All right, so the one he says one thing, and then I saw the whirlwind. Now, where the whirlwind is used, and I looked at this last year, I just simplified it a bit, but I do need to give it some context so we can understand the conflict situation that we're in. And that relates back to Daniel 11, verse 21, where it gives the context of a vile person who stand up, in who they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. You know what a flattery is? It's twisted little lies that's in line to the things that you want to believe, and then you believe it. And a vile person is someone who are willing to lie without blinking, with confidence that you will believe him. But you can't believe it, someone's saying that, and they're lying to my face. They are trained to do this because they've got that spirit within them. And I've met a couple of people like that in my life. It's unbelievable to see them in action. That they lie to your face, even if you're in a situation that you second guess yourself. But you were there. That's how good they are. Now that's the attribute of this vile person. Now this vile person is a minority, and we'll see it a little bit later on. And he said, after the league is made with him, he shall work deceitfully, and he shall come up and shall become strong with a small force of people, and shall enter peaceably even upon the richest places of the realm. So the minority that has the riches of this realm, they are the super elite. This vile person infiltrated them and used their money because they're a minority. They don't need to be many. They just need money, and money is powerful. And through their money, they influence everything. And he's coming there and deceive them and use their wealth and their power as a weapon against the whole world. And the battlefield is basically us within this time frame. And the outcome is for the next kingdom, which is...
And it's all done peaceably. Without weapons.
Yeah, it's peaceful. I believe World War III is such a peaceful war that no one will even know that there was a war.
There are those who say we're already in World War III.
We are. Yeah.
And I'm inclined to believe that.
That's what Matthew 24 says. There's covert wars. It's undercover. It's hidden. Wars going on. You'll buy and sell. You'll give up the marriage and blah, blah, blah. All those things will happen. People won't even know the difference.
You know, the the first horseman, and it says he comes with a bow, and a lot is made of the fact that arrows aren't mentioned. I found a scripture in, I can't remember, you can Google it. Was it Psalms? Somewhere that talks about a bow being a tongue, a bent tongue. And so the arrows are the words. So it made me think that, that first horseman that comes, he's that. He comes without his arrows.
No, he already shot all the arrows.
Yes.
He come in peace. See, I've got nothing, but he already shot them all.
Yeah. Deception.
Deception has already landed, and you can shoot with a bow and arrow from behind a hill or whatever. You don't even know who's shooting the arrows.
Isn't it the Hegelian dialectical? Isn't it? Yeah. You create the problem. You come up with the solution to the problem that you've created,
and then they grab. You create two solutions, and you want both.
Yes.
Either or. We have two parties. Doesn't matter which one you pick. Right. They will still implement the same things.
Yes.
Yeah. Or you leak it, you deny it, and then you implement it. That's the other strategy. How did they leak it? Through the Simpsons. And they deny it. That's very funny. But it's true. That's why it's so funny. And just looking at the language of the vile one and minority group and the ultra rich, it fits like a glove. It's a reality in our time, and we can see it. Who are the powers to be and what are they doing? So I've got a picture here on the right just to give it context. So in this battlefield, we'll see in the middle, we've got the two circles eclipsing. Now that's where the spiritual and the physical are overlapping. And last time we looked at it, where we looked at the seventh plague, where we had water and fire, two things that doesn't belong together, come together, and it was in the context of Yahweh appearing. Now we see the same here. Now, as soon as you bring two things that doesn't belong together, even if you have a high pressure and a low pressure, that's called a storm or a high wind. Two things that's not of the same kind that overlaps create chaos. In the same way, Yahweh's kingdom is sort of overlapping with this kingdom of this world because he is shortly appearing. But because of the overlap or the eclipse, we see that little gray area there? That's the battlefield. But that's a time frame battlefield as these things intersect with one another. But that's also the time of the great birth where those things will come into play. And those who adhere to Yahweh's things, they will join the kingdom of the north. And those who don't agree, they will be sucked into the kingdom of the south and be separated. We see the symbolism of the king of the north, king of the south in Daniel 11 as well, of this battle that is about to happen, which I'm going to read about to you next. That's in Daniel 11, 29, 31. And he said, at the appointed time, it's a battlefield within time or a time frame, specific time. So the place is all over the world, but specifically certain regions. But the time is the most important thing. And he said, he shall return and come into the south. But this latter time shall not be as the former. For the ships of Kittim shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant and take action. And he shall even return and show regard to those who forsake the holy covenant. Now this is the king of the south. His army shall rise up and desecrate the sanctuary fortress, and they shall abolish the daily sacrifice, set up the abomination that makes desolate. By flatteries he will corrupt those who act wickedly toward the covenant, but the people who know their God will be strong and take action. So we see this in context of Matthew 24. When you see the abomination of desolation set up and the sacrifices stop, you do a runner to the hills. Don't be part of the system. And those who know their God, they will be strong and they will take action. What action? They will remove themselves from the system. Now this system that's going to be implemented is going to be so attractive because it will solve so many problems that's been created by the little arrows that's been shot and things that's happening around us. The chaos that's been created, and it's all financial. People have needs. People need shelter. People need food. And the basic things are currently being challenged. So if people who are in need of those three things, you get someone with a bag with those three things in it, they will run to that person and grab onto it. But Yahweh said, no, run the other way. You go to the hills. Don't go towards the solution that's been provided as a result of the chaos that's been created during the time of sorrows.
And
So
I
we,
was just saying to Philip this morning, the people are ready for that because everyone is at breaking point.
Desperate.
They need something, so they will
That's
gladly now grab that.
And there's more to come.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, there's more to come.
Absolutely.
And they just need a break, so, you know, I just give up, just give me the universal income.
had enough.
I'll be happy.
You know you've seen the videos on the mass formation psychosis idea, where you put pressure on and you release pressure, release pressure, release pressure, until people are absolutely
Working.
Exhausted, yeah.
And like-minded.
and like-minded.
Yeah.
Well, we've noticed because we haven't had TV as such
Yes.
since we left. Well, we never even had it at Lincoln, but we haven't had TV. And we noticed coming back, we watched a bit last night, how everything's propaganda.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
yeah.
ads,
Oh, yeah.
everything's
Yeah, yeah.
propaganda, the whole thing.
You just turn it off. Don't you?
It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
We've been the same. We don't watch TV, and on the very rare occasion we do, you're spot on. You just turn it off.
So
No,
think about
it's
it.
depressing.
Social
You don't want to see it.
engineering
Yeah,
on a massive scale.
yeah, it's incredible, and the radio is the same.
Yeah.
There's one guy who said, I think his name was Confucius, if I remember correctly. He said, you don't need laws to govern people. Just give me symbolism. Now, what symbolism do we see around us? I saw a riot vehicle driving from work. Black one. Driving here, I saw military vehicles.
4, 5.
That's symbolism. So what does the symbolism say? We're in a state of war.
We even had them patrolling Talgum.
I had what?
Yeah, in Talgum.
Patrolling Talgum, first in cars and then on horseback.
Oh,
We actually went out to ask them, what are you doing? They said, no, we're just making sure that everything is okay, patrolling. And I said to Philip, they're conditioning us to see that this is normal.
Because they don't add value. They don't do anything.
nah.
They don't pick up rubbish or fill potholes.
Just conditioning
Fill
us.
potholes. That's
They just
right.
take Instagram photos for our beloved.
I've seen
Prime
with
Minister.
with the flooding, that what's happened is, all these people are without homes now, and people are angry because there's rich people in the area, obviously, Byron and all that. Why don't the rich people open up their property and let these homeless people come and live? And, that's not fair. The wealth should be distributed evenly. They're angry because they've been through trauma.
Yeah.
They're asking for
A leader who
for
will
a leader who will
organise
organise
Yeah.
socialism and universal.
Yeah, but the leaders
income
don't want to
be-
give money. That's why the
they
pressure
want to
is cooking.
destroy, Yeah. They want to destroy the people.
Graham Hood said in Korakai, where he went and spent some time, he said the military were there for 3 days before they did anything.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason they didn't do anything is they were waiting for orders. And they didn't receive orders from on high
That's right.
till 3 days after they arrived. So they're standing around, they're doing nothing, and all the work's being done by the local population.
Yeah, Kayla was telling us, and they also saw, these trucks just standing there, and the guy pulled up behind them and said, mate, these trucks won't offload themselves. Why don't you help? You just stand there, taking on.
Yeah.
They follow instructions. Anyway, back to our time frame.
It is.
But what we read here is evident. Now, the two things I want to point out here is, when does the actual Great Tribulation start? Now, that's actually in Daniel, and it's referring to these two things, or two witnesses. It has to do with the sacrifice. The sacrifice has to do with Jerusalem, the temple, the attempt to rebuild the temple, the attempt to cleanse the temple, to set up a sacrifice specifically around a Passover, which we might observe this year or maybe next year, depending on the timing. And as soon as that starts, now you'll get the other side of the religious force, which I believe will be the ones with the black stone, the black cube, and they will put pressure on the Jews who just started sacrifice because it's their holy place as well. Then it will be stopped. And then I will put up abomination, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's a statue of, I don't know who, or maybe it's a symbol of a rock or a stone or whatever symbolism. And that will be our sign that starts the countdown of 1,260 days, which is approximately 3.5 years. And if you start on a Passover, it will end on a trumpet, which is in line with the last trumpet or the coming of Mashiach.
I used to think, oh, well, they've got to have the temple in place. No. But they don't.
They don't.
No, the Temple Institute are ready to go now.
They're built from the inside out. You need to cleanse it first.
They have to make a sacrifice before they build the temple.
And the red heifer is
the red heifer has to be,
which already have things in place.
Yes, all in place. So everything is ready.
Yeah, ready to go.
Ready for a couple of years.
So when we look at this prophecy, we normally look around this season of Passover. We see what's happening in the Middle East, specifically Jerusalem. And what's happening there to see if this is triggered. If this is triggered, we know, run to the hills. Don't know where that is. Yahweh need to reveal it.
We're already in the hills.
Maybe we're already in the hills. We wait for the people to run to us. Maybe. Don't know. But we need to have our minds ready to be strong and take action, whatever action Yahweh gives us. So we need to be listening to his voice, specifically those who have that gifting. All right, then Daniel 11:40-41, he said, at the time of the end, the king of the south shall push at him, but the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. And ye shall enter the countries and shall overflow them and pass over. And ye shall enter also the pleasant land, and many countries shall be overthrown. Therefore he shall go with great fury and destroy and annihilate many. He shall pitch the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and in the beautiful holy mountain, which is Mount Zion. So what I can read between the lines here, I think Israel's military, just like the Yom Kippur War, will be supernaturally led by the king of the north, which is Yahweh, and they will be the military force and the ships and all that will annihilate the enemies, because that's the concentration of the conflict. All the nations around them hate them, and the world is fueling and linking up and making alliance with those countries and people. So the big battlefield is actually Israel, and that's where we'll see the main action happening. It will just ripple out to the rest of the world. Whoever backing who and whatever powers in play will suffer whatever consequences depending on how they evolved. Now, so that is why the CEO of BlackRock said, buckle up. So we need to buckle up. Something's stewing, something about to happen. But we've got the roadmap of Yahweh's timeline, his prophetic roadmap. We know he's in control. We know where we stand as his people, the function we're about to play. We will be protected and we will be fine.
Psalm 91.
Psalm 91. So don't fear. They need to fear, because our God is so mighty. He will melt your face. All right, stepping off that topic. I'm quickly going to touch on this. We are going to discuss this next week with leprosy. Just a quick side note on leprosy. Leprosy is a supernatural illness that manifests on the flesh. And it's based on sin that people do, and then it manifests as whatever type of ailment, sore, whatever. If you read Leviticus, you'll see they've got little hairs in them and all sorts of gory stuff. And the priests need to inspect it and see if they're clean or not. But we'll look at in detail of that. But the nature of this illness of leprosy it's an illness of the skin, the or. And the skin is due to the nakedness, the departure of the glory of Yahweh exposed the skin. And now the skin is just showing what it is. It's leprous. The fallen state of man is a leprous state. When you're born as a beautiful new baby, you've got fallen nature. You've got leprosy. That's why we need healing. And the healing process is what we just discussed last week and this week as well. So Yahweh's got a process of cleansing. Now, the things I want to emphasize in the context of leprosy and our fallen state are the two things which is known as clean and unclean. Now, unclean is the word tamei, which is a nice sounding word, and tahor, which means actually clean, which sounds like the nasty one, but it's actually the other way around. So tamei and tahor is found in Leviticus 10:10, where it says, and that you may put difference between holy and unholy, and between unclean and clean. So we see the direct relationship between holiness, unholiness, clean and unclean. So if you do unclean things, it will affect your holiness. Your holiness is your level of elevation to allow you to stand in the presence of Yahweh. It's nothing to do with salvation. It's to do with let's call it preservation of yourself. Because if you only have 10% light, 90% darkness, the 90% darkness will disappear, and the 10%, which is just maybe a little blood spot on the floor, will remain, because that's the only pure thing that's left. So we need to pursue holiness in order to have a restored relationship. But the level of holiness, that's why Yeshua said there will be least in the kingdom those who teach people not to do my commandments, and there will be people called great in the kingdom, those who do and teach my commandments. So we know where we stand. We want to be great in the kingdom, and to be great means that you've got a high level of holiness, and you've got the role of a priest that can enter into the holy place that's closer to the Holy of Holies than people who teach not to do the commandments. They still at the brazen altar with one foot outside the outer court, and they love a bit of things in the world, but they also feel guilty, and then they repent, and then they sin a bit, and then they repent. It's a bit of a two-way street for them, and that is called the least. Now, unclean, tamei, means defiled, foul, infamous, polluted, impure, and unclean. For those who haven't had their rubbish removed for 3 weeks, open up your bin, you'll read all about uncleanness there.
That's right.
And not only that, driving down the streets, as the sun is shining, the dust of the flood now comes into the air. It's got a lot of chemicals, mold, things in it. You inhale it, and you become sick of that dust that you inhale. So I had that last week or the week before, a massive sinus
Because
infection.
of the sewerage system.
Everything. It's just filthy. It's bad. Yeah. So be privileged if you don't interact with them.
Nice to ponder on.
Yeah, well, because I was working during the flood, the first one, wasn't at home, so I left the windows open, but you know, there wasn't action and things like that. And it was the Friday afternoon, something I came home and I said, "But what's going on?" Our table, mold. The fruit bowl on my table, mold. It's a wooden bowl. You know those light things that fill at night, everything, the baskets in my bathroom, the baskets in everything mold, and some of them black mold.
Wow, really?
Yeah, the ones in the bathroom started to grow black mold. Yeah, and it's because, you know,
Humidity is in the air.
Well, it's all the humidity in there.
And the
Because
all
of
the
so
stuff
much
coming up
rain.
from that.
Mhm.
So there's I'm sorry, Philip, there is a guy here from Wollongong, and he's got a page on Telegram called Mold Army, where he actually mixes up clove oil and some other things to help, because a lot of people struggling now with mold after the floods.
Is that interesting?
It makes you sick. That's part of the plague that's eating us, the black mold.
And flies, we're struggling with flies
Ants.
and mosquitoes and
Yeah.
everything.
That rain
So
we
you're in
had
Egypt.
a week ago was probably helped a lot with the dust to wash it back off the roads into the gutters and away.
Yeah.
Because for 4 weeks it's been very dry, mud, dusty.
Yeah. So that is tamei.
That's right.
Hey, we've got the May.
So tahor, or clean, listen to this: pure, fair, clean, and unmixed.
That's interesting.
Unmixed is an interesting word, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't mix seed, you don't splice animals,
And
you don't modify
No
the seeds.
hybrids.
And you don't
No
mix
hybrids.
stuff with religious.
It's all about keeping things pure, so it's after its kind. Otherwise, you make it unclean. So even if you eat chicken that's been modified with whatever, it's actually unclean. You need to try and get organic things, because you'll eat those unclean things, all the hormones and things that inject in those food. It's no longer food. All right, so tahor has got the gematria of 220. That means dividing, storm, beaten, to drain out, to shatter into pieces, to break, and to work. So what I read from this, if you look at the word clean, there's the same as multiplying the sorrow. You see the same language used, to shatter into pieces, beaten, to drain out. So your suffering you go through, persecution you might go through, your commitments or your sacrifices that you take will result into something that is pure and clean. Even though it feels like you're shattered, you're drained, you're broken into pieces, Yahweh will use that because that's a form of humility. Just don't rebel once you're in that state. Just accept it for what it is, see it for what it is, and look beyond that, because what's beyond it is the branch, the portion, the neck, which is the restoration of the neck, which is basically, if I go back to the previous slide, if you look at the top part, which is the spiritual, which is the head, and the bottom part, which is the physical, which is the body, the neck is where the vocal cords are, and that connects the two parts. So even within our body, we've got our spiritual mind, you've got your physical body, and they're in conflict with one another. And your speech is so important for which one you're going to follow. I'm going to follow the flesh. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, there's McDonald's. Or are you going to think about, no, I'll wait, I'll make some clean food at home. So your decision that you make is expressed through your speech. The vocal cords is in the neck, but it upholds your head. The mind. Keep your minds pure. Keep your minds filled with the word of Yahweh, and let that be your decision-making area where you discern between clean and unclean, and clean things are all that's relating to Yahweh and His commandments. Any unclean things relate to mixing and confusion and lies and the fleshly things.
I listened to Dr. Caroline early this morning, and she was just talking how the mind and the gut is related. So if this is not good, this will not be good either, because it's not, the processing of food, the digesting of food already starts in the mind. As soon as you start thinking about food, it's already starting in the gut. Your body is already starting to process. And if you feed yourself with unclean things or bad food,
or if you desire those things, you dream about
it affects your mind. So these two work together. It's extremely interesting. You love Caroline Lee, don't you?
Yeah.
So just go and have a listen to what she has to say about the YouTube video is called Foods to Detox Your Mind. Very interesting.
So what we also see there is chosen one stand at the threshold, which is another term for marriage, threshold covenant, to be carried over the threshold. Yahweh chooses lady and queen. So that's the end result of all the clean decisions that you make, that's in line with Yahweh's word, is the purification process. Previously we looked at the manna, which is the nourishment for the baby to keep them alive. What we'll see here, the clean food as you eat solids, and the clean thoughts that you have, your clean actions that you have, build you up to become the queen. But the stage before queen is the mother that will help to nurture the babies as well. So it's a progressive step. So yes, clean food is important, clean thoughts are important. The decision that you make needs to be in line with Yahweh's word in order to elevate your holiness or your clean state, so that you can be purified like Esther and stand before the king. And not insult him with your garbage smell and whatever hanging out your mouth, dripping, big fat. So clean and unclean, this is just a bit of a word picture. It starts with the letter tet. Now clean is the word tahor, tet, hey, vav, resh. Now tet means serpent. And unclean is the word tameh that starts with a tet, and it's got mem aleph. Now, what we can see from tameh, it's got two letters that's actually positive. We've got the mem, That means the word of Yahweh, or the water of the word. We have Aleph, which is Yahweh's character. Now, if we tamei or make Yahweh's word unclean, or Yahweh's character unclean, we become after the serpent's kind. And that's what the unclean things are all about, is to defile Yahweh's character within you and defile his word. So you don't longer think about his word when you make decisions regarding clean and unclean, let alone think about holy things. So that's the tactic of the opposer. It's entwined within that word. On the same token, when we look at tahor, we have the serpent, and then we have the little vav. That's you. What's between you and the serpent? It's the letter Hey. Hey means light. Light is the word of Yahweh, or the truth. So the truth is the barrier or the shield that's between you and the serpent. It is written. It's the light of the truth. You will overcome the serpent. If you don't have the light of the truth there, you're in direct contact with the serpent, and he will overcome you and rule over you. And that's the meaning of the letter Resh at the end. So we need to be led by Yahweh's word, and then we rule on behalf of Yahweh in this world. Or if we take away the light of the word, the serpent will influence us, not his word, and we will be used by him, and then we'll rule the world on behalf of the serpent. Beautiful word picture there.
Hebrew is such a concealed language, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I already spoke about the connection between clean and kodesh, or holy. What's interesting, if you look at the word tahor, it's got the hey, that means light, and kodesh got the letter shin, that's the origin of light, it's fire. And both those letters also represent the spirit. Shin is the gifts, fire upon the heads, the ability or the anointing. The hey is the truth, or the spirit of truth, and that is relating to the word of Yahweh. We see both of them producing light in your life. If you do clean things, it will elevate your holiness, and there will be a flame burning through your abilities and your anointing that Yahweh give you. If you don't have the light of the word, your little anointing flame will go out, and you'll be full of darkness and won't have the light to shine within his household.
No, you'll have to burn again.
You have to be burned again.
You have to burn so that you can become holy. So what? You will see the fire.
And then we have Psalm 91. Whoever lives under the shelter of Elyon will remain in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to Yahweh, you are my refuge and my fortress, my Elohim, in whom I trust. He is the one who will rescue you from hunters' traps and from deadly plagues. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His truth is your shield and your armor. That truth is that hay, that light that protects you. So, interesting, Deuteronomy 28 is everything that you do in line with Yahweh's word will result in blessing and prosperity and covering and protection. And if you don't do the things of Yahweh, it will expose you. You'll be cursed in the land, cursed in the city, cursed going in, cursed going out. And in the history of Israel, they became captives and then slaves and then helped to build the kingdom of darkness, which is symbolism of Egypt.
But again, it's not Yahweh who's doing it. He's just removing himself.
No, you remove him. You remove him, then you get contact with the Tet. It's not him.
Because
Yeah.
then you're not protected by
Yeah,
his
that letter A is your protection against the serpent.
anymore. And then you're exposed, and that's why you are cursed in the field, cursed in the city.
Yeah.
It's
And
not
the-
Yahweh that does it.
No. And the serpent is the one with the forked tongue who bring words of confusion and lies. And he was the one who instigated the woman to generate the lie in her own head by him asking a creative question. As God said. And then she, through her mouth, created the lie and then believed it and acted on it.
We've been reading this SDA document called Three Angels.
Yeah, it wasn't, it's not, it was, I don't know if it's, no, it's just a writer that they put in. Anyway.
No, well, I'm assuming that because they're passing it out at all the rallies and stuff that. And interestingly, he makes the point that our whole way of seeing the law as being judicial is a corruption of the truth that it's design. It's design.
For
So,
us to think that. It's designed for us to think in such a way.
well,
He's saying that,
So
that
it's like-
Yahweh's law is really designed, and we use the word law,
Yeah.
then confuse it
Confuse
with
it.
where that's man's
Yeah.
way.
for
Yeah.
Yeah.
the law of gravity,
Yeah.
it's not, no one's judging you,
Yeah.
no one's punishing you.
It's just
It
there.
just is.
It is,
Yeah, you jumped,
yeah.
And
And I think
transgress it.
and gravity will sort you out.
so the transgression is your decision.
Yeah.
Everything is your decision. It's not a God meting out punishment upon you for doing the wrong thing. It's you making the wrong choice.
Yeah, it's like spiritual laws that's saying if you run into it, you'll get hurt.
Yes.
If you disobey them, the consequences are there.
Yeah.
It's really like Yahweh saying, I'm going to reveal to you because I love you
Mm.
how I work, how my creation works.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you that knowledge so that you can.
So you won't get hurt.
Yeah.
Right.
Give that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sharing it with you. Yeah.
So it's instruction.
That's exactly
It's
right.
instruction. Look, you want to have a good life? This is the way I've designed things. Follow this,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But you also get the consequences on the other side of that.
Mm.
If you don't, you have consequences to
Mm.
your own actions.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what,
You make
what
a choice.
yeah, that's what
Yeah,
we're saying.
it's different too.
Your choice is causing you to experience
This.
Yahweh's law
Yeah.
or instruction.
Yeah.
So our most important thing that I think we need to learn today is that Yahweh's word is our protection
That's right.
through any time that's coming. That's our shelter and our shield, our protection.
Absolutely.
And that and a few other bits and pieces out of Psalm, can't be on Psalm 91 as well. That's the promise.
So imagine
Promise.
a shield that's made up of a skimpy little strip of metal that you hold with two fingers that's called love. What will that protect you? Or if you have the fullness of the complexity of Yahweh's interwoven instructions that cover you from all bases, and you sit under that. So it's your choice what shield you hold up and how simple you want your shield.
Think how important that is right at this point in time. I mean, we take it for granted, really. We've been blessed to be in the position that we're in. But if you're being bombarded continually, you have to actively resist everything that's been
Every arrow.
everything that's been thrown at you. You have to actively resist.
Just through the media or
You
through
can't,
whatever.
you can no
no.
longer be passive. You have to make a decision. Everything you see, everything you hear, every image that you receive, every symbol that's presented to you, it requires you to make a decision.
But
Do I
once the
receive
light
this?
is switched on, those things just bounce off. It's easy to discern. It's easy not to be absorbed.
That verse at the end of Daniel that says, those who know their God
Will be strong
will be strong
and act.
because they know how it works.
Yeah. I found that thing about the neck interesting because that picture you had of the battle going where it overlaps and you've got this neck connecting.
Yeah.
And it said, I think you said something about meditating on the word and then the speech.
Yeah, the speech that comes from that.
Because it's the area that is attacked. We get attacked by Satan through the spirit of fear, and you can't speak.
We're not allowed to speak.
You
You
can't.
don't have a voice
You
anymore.
don't have a voice.
No.
And it's interesting that Yeshua said, you don't worry about what you're going to say. You'll have the word, because if in that thing that you did there, if you feel he says if you, where is it? You said something about it heals that area. I just found that really fascinating. That we've got this time now to fill ourselves with His word, and when the time comes, we'll have the words. We'll be able to speak. We'll have the ability. We won't have to worry about for those new babes that are born or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, as we think, what can I do? What can I say?
Yeah, so I'm not going to do the last slide, which is all about leprosy. Already said something about it. We'll look at it next week.
Yeah.
I think for this week it's important to understand our place, our purpose, give us the boldness and the weapon we need to overcome what is on our doorstep. All right, any comments or questions?
It was a good one. Lot to digest.
I like the hay.
Yeah.
Tame and Tabor, to protect you.
Because the serpent is always there. And the problem is he's to your right. He's there to resist you to move spiritually or to advance spiritually. So you need to sort of have the shield there and keep on pushing to gain ground into the spirit. And he's the opposer, push you back. So it's a battle. All right. So if there's no more comments or questions, who wants to close in prayer?
Father, it's so good to be here again in person. There's an element that we've missed out on in listening to Philip's presentation from a distance. It's an intangible thing. We just thank you for that, Lord. But we also thank you that you are actively preparing us right now for what's ahead, and we can feel that protection. And we thank you that today we've had the opportunity to alert ourselves yet again to what we need to take on board in order to be protected in the future and to be ready for what's ahead and to be able to act accordingly in any situation that we're in. Father, we just thank you for that, and we ask you to ensure that we all take in what we need to take in from this presentation, and it becomes a foundation from which to act in the future in this world that we're in. And may that be done in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach.
Amen. All right, so thank you very much, Michelle. We will see you next time, and hope you have a lovely day.